Hey everybody, welcome to Wing Talk. Happy Father's Day. This is the INAV 3.0 special. You've got INAV, the reviews are out. What do you think? Is it working for you? People seem to love it, but we're going to help you get it really dialed in, I would say. Just really absolutely spectacular. We have an exciting show today. We have the panel and special guest. The artist formerly known as Rory is joining us today. So we have just a packed show. Let me introduce the panel first and foremost. Before I do, I just want to mention one thing, and that is in the United States, every February 2nd, we have an ongoing tradition, which is based out of Pennsylvania, a place called Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Punxsutawney Phil is a groundhog, and if it comes out and sees its shadow on February 2nd, the tradition goes that you have 6 more weeks of winter. However, if it comes out and it doesn't see its shadow, it means we're going to have an early spring. So this is an ongoing tradition, and I am so glad to say that the UK now has its own version of that, which is if we look at this guy's hairdo and we can see if lockdown is happening or not. So this has been our ongoing gauge for the COVID lockdown in the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin, does Luke have that haircut that we've been hoping for, or is it, I don't know, if he has a shaggy hairdo, once again, that means 6 more weeks of lockdown in the UK.
Something
Luke,
has
how's it going
changed.
today, babes?
Yeah, everything's going good here, and as you can see, I do still have the hair. So lockdown.
Oh my God, 6 more weeks of lockdown in the UK, huh?
Lockdown's been postponed for another 4 weeks in the UK, so no more haircuts.
That's great. So thank you. I want to thank your parents for getting you the Greek food and wolfing it down, within 5 minutes before the show.
Yeah, and in a different room today as well. Yeah, not there's no planes around or anything.
They had to work around your schedule so you could join us on Wing Talk. So I really do appreciate that. So fantastic, great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. Are you on a different here on a tablet today or something?
Yeah, I'm on a phone that's being propped up at the bottom of my laptop because my laptop webcam doesn't work. So that's what we're dealing with.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today. The next guy, I wanted to mention one thing, and I didn't. A lot of times the British people we've got a show full of British people today, but a lot of times British people are kind of reserved and they keep a stiff upper lip and they don't really bang their own drum, so to say, not like we do in the United States. So there's one guy that when you think about INAV 3.0, I was surprised to learn this. I was watching Paul's podcast about a week ago, and he mentioned that the 4th largest developer for INAV, the guy who's contributed the most, is our very own Darren Lyon. So Darren, thank you so much. How are you doing today?
Yeah, not bad. I think that was just a configurator though, not the actual firmware. But yeah, it's quite nice to get mentioned in the stream.
Oh, it's cool. It's you helped out, and it's really important. So you did some of the graphics for some of the. I think some of the graphics for the accelerometers for calibrating those.
No, the graphics I did, they're coming in 3.1. They didn't quite make it into 3.0, but yeah, there's a little hint of what's coming in my video that I put out for what's new in 3.0.
By the way, as long as we're talking, can you stand up so everyone can see that wonderful shirt you're wearing?
Yeah, sure. Well, if I stand up, I think it'll go off screen, so I'm gonna have to. There we go.
Crash with INAV. So there's a story behind that. Obviously, it's not Crash, but it looks like Crash, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They're available on your website, right?
Yeah.
Put a link in the show description.
Shameless plug.
Shameless plug. Well, yeah, you got the shirt you're wearing. It's awesome. Plus, you can get a Mr. D Falling with Style shirts as well, and hats and all sorts of other stuff. So thanks for joining us, Darren. And as always, the maestro. We had a big shout out from Arthur for asking where would we be without Marc Hoffmann, and we would still be be very lost without Marc Hoffmann. So This is the Marc Hoffman Appreciation Hour. Marc, how are you doing today?
Yeah, hi, Steve. I'm doing great. Looking forward to a good show. And yeah, I mean, it was really nice with that shout out. But of course, I'm just the dude who tries to figure out how that stuff works. I mean, the real magicians are the developers actually who make that possible. So, but yeah, thanks.
Fantastic. Well, yeah, really. I mean, you've done a hell of a lot for the group. Pretty much every waking hour when you're not working or flying, you're in the group, making sure that things run smoothly and helping people out with questions. And, you know, a lot of times it's like, I answer people back. It's like, hey, Mark's sleeping right now. And when he wakes up and goes to work and comes home, he'll answer your question. So, you know, hang out and you'll get your answer. So thank you so much for everything you do. We are going to be talking with you quite a bit about INAV 3.0, but before we get into that, we should introduce our guest today. He is a gentleman also from the UK who is been a member of our group for about 9 months, and the guy has a lot of really interesting, brilliant ideas. His posts are really interesting. Always look forward to seeing them, and we figured he's a pretty cool dude. We should get him on the show. So Rory, how you doing?
Hi guys, thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here.
Oh, fantastic. And we're going to talk about all your planes and all that stuff. But that's really in the second hour. We're going to get into more of like a free flow kind of talk around. The first hour, we're going to get right into the INAV 3.0. So we should open up. Marc, your notes on INAV 3.0 as of right now.
Can you say again? I didn't understand the last thing.
Well, yeah, what I would like to get into today is just kind of like talking about INAV 3.0 and what we think so far and how to set it up and get improved. I know there's been some questions in particular about Autolevel, how to work with Autolevel and how to do a tune with that and which modes you should be in for doing the tune. So, yeah, there's quite a bit more to than meets the eye. So I hope we get into that as well today.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you hit a perfect topic here, the Autolevel. There's already a issue report on GitHub made from Darren to rename Autolevel, just give it a different name, because right now, and you experienced the same, Steve, when with your post recently, that Autolevel leads to some kind of confusion, because what it actually does is it only trims your angle of attack for level flight. That's all. That's everything. Autolevel. The pitch, yeah, the angle of attack during level flight. If you don't touch the sticks, if the plane itself orients on the horizon. So that's what Autolevel actually is doing. It's not like making angle mode better, or it's not like making your plane flying in a straight line instead of a turn in angle mode or whatever. It's just the pitch angle that is trimmed, so the plane will fly more or less at a constant altitude if it's self-leveled.
Okay, good. And so why is that important? Why should we be concerned about having an automatic pitch or pitch adjustment from, you know, done with INAV? And why this is a new feature? It's kind of an important feature. Why is it so big? Why is it so important?
Yeah, I think it's very important to have a well-trimmed pitch trim. First of all, for navigation modes, because if you are in a navigation mode with altitude hold active, the altitude controller doesn't have to fight and push all the time and pitch up the nose to keep at a constant altitude, because if that happens and then you make altitude changes, you still have this I term, this integral term of the altitude controller pushing into one direction, and because the I term is slow in response usually, you get different behavior if you want to go into a dive or into a climb during altitude hold modes. And if you have a well-tuned angle of attack for level flight, the integral term hasn't much to do at all and stays neutral during level flight. So altitude changes later will be more stable and more consistent.
Darren, what are your thoughts about Autolevel? Why do you think it's important?
Just because it sort of takes the guesswork out of it. I mean, in the past, we've got our flight controllers. We've said, yeah, we need about 5 degrees of up trim. I guess very few people actually went to the stage of setting it up on an OSD and actually trim the board pitch in flight. And this will just do all that for you. So you just get a better flying plane at the end of the day.
Right. So this is something I'm sure Luke can explain this better, but the idea is that when you're flying, what happens if you fly perfectly level, you just start losing altitude, right? But you need to have, because the planes are naturally inefficient, so you have to put a little bit of pitch up in order to maintain altitude. Luke, can you explain that better?
Yeah, not necessarily the inefficiency is a problem, but certainly you need to be pitched up to an extent, to create some positive lift, or not necessarily even pitched up. You need to be, you need to be either level or whatever it is for that particular plane, and that would with airspeed.
But they change by plane. Some planes need more, some planes need less.
Exactly, it even changes with things like battery load, airspeed, lots of different things. So
if efficiency actually plays a role, if you go one step further, because most of the planes we know have already a specific angle of attack integrated in their wing mount compared to the fuselage and compared to the flight controller mount. But this angle of attack is usually at a position or at an angle where you have level flight at a certain speed, and usually somewhere in the mid-range of the maximum possible or the lowest speed. If you have a very efficient cruiser that flies slow, you need more angle of attack, and then you need to trim that for it.
Okay, interesting. So this is a mode that only works in horizon and angle modes, right?
Yes, Autolevel only can be done in angle and horizon mode, but it affects all flight modes that are self-leveling. So basically everything except manual and acro mode.
So is this it constantly is working, or is this a one-time set it and you're done kind of thing?
It is meant to be used as a one-time trim. You do it one time, like previously the Servo auto trim. You activate it, you let the plane and the flight controller do its thing for a few seconds until the variometer settles at around 0 meters per second level flight, and then you switch it off, the value gets saved, and you are basically done. You can run it continuously, but it can get side effects if you are flying through like thermals or downwinds or whatever, and this can mess up your board pitch trim. So it's recommended to use it only as a tuning mode.
Okay, so that becomes the $1 million question, because it only works in horizon mode and angle mode, right?
Yes, only in these two modes it can be used.
All right, so then the question becomes, what happens when you're doing an auto tune? Because if you're doing an auto tune, you're in acro mode. It's one of those two modes you said that it doesn't work with.
What do you mean? You mean if you enable the auto level during auto tune?
Right, you're supposed to use the auto level before. You're supposed to set it up, and that's what, like, the first thing you do is you take it out. So let me start from the beginning. Let's say you get a plane, you got a new plane, you get it up, it's flying. You're flying in manual. You're flying around in manual at first, and you're getting it's set up so there's 0 trim set up in the radio, right?
Yep.
Then when you're done with that, what you should do is take it next into acro mode and start flying around in acro mode to make sure that the plane still flies okay. And then when you do that, you switch into either angle or horizon mode, and with that, you need to have auto level turned on, right?
Yes, actually, it makes even more sense to do the auto tune first, because then the pitch control or the PIFF controller has more ability to keep the plane at a level flight, at the level attitude in angle mode. So do the auto tune first, and then you do the auto level in angle mode or in horizon mode, whatever you want.
Okay, so all right, so the first thing you do after you're flying around in manual, after you do the manual trim, you can get your plane to put in acro mode and do your auto tune, and then when you're done with your auto tune, you get your PIDs set the way you want. Make sure you're safe. You take it back up, put it into horizon mode or whatever. And the first time you do that, and the first time you get into a level flight in horizon mode or in angle mode, that's when it does its calculations?
Yes, exactly. If you are in angle mode, INAV will look what's your current pitch angle, what is the variometer doing. So you at least need a barometer on your flight controller, of course. So INAV sees altitude changes and the speed of the altitude changes. And if the altitude goes up, then it will trim the board slowly downwards. And if the altitude goes down, of course, the pitch trim will be trimmed upwards until the variometer stays stable at 0 meters per second. I also have I already made a complete video about my personal tuning process, where I show everything from the first launch till complete autotune, angle, Autolevel, and a few other things I tune manually with the OpenTX Pro model on-screen tuning. I just had no time to finish the English version yet, but as soon as this is finished, I will release the video in both languages.
Okay, fantastic. So then the other thing is the continuous servo trim in place of doing an auto trim. That is something that you keep on all the time, as opposed to the Autolevel, right?
Yep, that's actually my second favorite thing on INAV 3.0, to be honest, because especially for people who like to fly in manual mode, it's really, really helpful, and people with very limited channel numbers on their radios, for example. Like you don't. Sometimes it happens. You transported your plane, or it has warped a little bit when it was laying in the sun, so you can perfectly trim your plane at one day, then the next day you fly again, and then you fly in manual mode and it's drifting away all the time again. So then you have to use the auto trim again. Based on that, you have to keep it fitted to your setup all the time. It uses a channel, you know what I mean. And yeah, with the continuous auto trim, that's not needed anymore. You don't need to do it manually anymore. You just fly around with that stick for 10 seconds, 15 seconds in total without any stick input in acro mode, angle mode, whatever mode you want. The trim gets adjusted automatically, everything is fine, and then you can fly in manual mode. And I tried it on a few planes already. In manual mode, I released my sticks and I was able to fly for around a minute until I was nearly out of reach of my FPV feed, and it didn't drop. It was like flying in angle mode, although I was in manual, so it works perfectly.
Okay, so now we know better. So we can have this video out pretty soon, and you're going to we're going to go through, and then also you'll be updating the manuals so that people can get a more simplistic. It looks like the 3 phases. We had 3 phases of the masterclass tuning. It's probably going to go down to about 1 phase now, with all, because a lot of the stuff has been redone.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, the only thing that really changes is in phase 3, there is the navigation tuning, the navigation optimization, where we do this auto level or this pitch trim adjustment. That will just change with the auto level mode. And phase 1 is the biggest difference, that you don't have to fly in manual mode, determine your rates, and then count frames, and all that stuff will be shrink together into an auto tune. That's all.
Perfect. I love that. Fantastic. So, Darren, what are your thoughts on INAV 3.0? Have you flown it at all?
I've not had a chance to fly it yet. Unfortunately, it's on that. I just updated that yesterday, I think, to the stable release. But yeah, to be honest, I've been snowed under with work, had really nice weather when I couldn't fly, and then really bad weather when potentially I could. So yeah, I've not actually.
I'm trying to figure out what that is.
That's
air. Yeah. It's an error, meaning missing the decals. Okay. Got it.
I might do my own.
All right. So the only other person here besides myself that's flown INAV 3.0 is Rory. So Rory, what are your thoughts on INAV 3.0?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I absolutely love it. It's a huge, huge improvement over the previous versions. The simplicity, the setup, the locked-in feel to the flights, and the just kind of the ease of tuning. Just fantastic.
Well, great. I'd love to hear that. So you were talking about, you set it up on a Mini Drak and got that flying and tuned in really nicely, right? And so,
yeah.
Talking more about that. So Mark, what besides those two features, what else do you think is big with INAV 3.0?
You mean these two features we already talked about? Of course, the third big feature, and in my opinion, the best one, is really the new autotune. I've worked on that with Alex a lot, so I was testing his code changes a few times on different planes. I used everything from my Dart 250 over Talon 250G for the small planes that are not that sensitive for crashes, just in case something goes wrong. And I even tried it on the Rafax in later versions, and it just worked absolutely fantastic. We did some fine-tuning, basically some last-minute changes, I think 4 or 5 days before the final release. We had to change a few things, like the servo throw it uses. But basically, yeah, the new autotune, the big thing is the automatic rate determination. So it automatically detects how fast your plane can roll, pitch, and yaw, and tunes these values by itself. So, and that was one, I would say 80% of all tuning issues or navigation issues we saw, that people say they turn on return to home and the plane are snaking or wobbling when they go into a turn or whatever. I think 80% or maybe even more was related to not tuned rates. And then we always have to point to our tuning manuals, and so people know how to do it. And this all goes away right now. It is still very conservative. So most planes are actually capable of achieving higher rates than autotune does on default, but this can be tweaked and can be optimized by the user if you want to get the maximum out of your plane. But by default, it's meant to be as stable as possible and as reliable as possible.
And the word we're getting back is people tend to really like it. I mean, they really like the way that the autotune process goes. I like the way that the planes are set up. And we had Leslie say that the rates are a little bit higher than he's used to. But in your video, you show how to dial those back if you don't want such high rates, right?
Yeah, in the video I will release, I have not shown some tweaks in autotune, but this will also come. I mean, I hope I'm not too fast at this point, but let's talk about some possible tweaks you can do. I know some people have still experienced, even with the final version of INAV 3.0, that the pitch rate was so low that the feed-forward value maxed out at 255. So basically, they reached the limit. I think the lowest limit that can be set is 40 degrees per second, but during the autotune process, and but the highest feed forward at 255 only allows a rate at least 50 degrees per second. So they end up at 50 degrees per second with a feed forward value of 255. What can cause that? Can have different reasons. Just recently, I had a talk with a friend with his Talon GT who had this issue. His plane was just nose heavy. The Talon GT is a plane where the CG is very hard to find, because you have to know that the nose has to be slightly pointed up if you balance the plane on your fingers with the CG marks. But his nose, he was basically looking at the top of the fuselage, and then the nose is pointing down, and the plane was nose heavy. If you have a nose heavy plane, you have less pitch authority for pitch up, so INAV will get lower rates and therefore go too high with the feed forward value. That's not a problem. The plane will still fly, but you don't get the agility you could have. Another thing that can happen is if you have planes like very big planes that have in general a very low pitch rate. INAV only uses 90% of the maximum servo throw on each axis to determine how much rates it can achieve on the axis. And what can happen on planes like, let's say, a big Drak. I've seen that on a big Drak actually. The big Drak has very low. Okay, it's hard to explain for me right now. It has very low rates in the, let's say, first 50-60% of throw. It's precise. It can control very precisely how fast it rolls or pitches on each axis, but the rates are still very low. And only in the last bit where the control surfaces can move, it achieves like an exponential punch on each axis. And if INAV only uses 90% of the throw, you don't get that last punch and you end up with a very low rate. So what you can do to compensate for that, either you go into the CLI and you change the usable servo throw that autotune can use. By default, that's 90%. Or the second option I would even recommend here is to either mechanically adjust the plane to get more control surface deflection than usually is needed, or you just adjust the servo endpoints a little bit higher. So your min servo endpoints 900 and the max to 2100. And this way INAV gets more room to work on and you will get your full rates during the autotune with 90% deflection.
You said this was with a Bixler?
No, the big Drak.
The big Drak.
Big Drak, yeah.
Three different planes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the big Drak, it's a fast plane. It's really agile on roll, but we know it's slow on the pitch axis by design. It's a speed cruiser. It's not meant to do very fast loops or so.
Okay, so that's a good question. I mean, we're talking about a big plane here, the big Drak. And you also mentioned in previous podcasts that we had INAV works well with planes up to about 2,500 millimeters. Is that still true?
INAV can work with any plane of any size. In theory, you could even fly a manned aircraft with it. In theory, I wouldn't recommend. But the INAV default values, the default tuning, is meant to be stable and even navigation stable for planes, let's say, up to 2 meters. So okay. I only have seen planes with more than 2 meters wingspan, like a Ranger 2400, and or even bigger. They can struggle in navigation mode when they go into turns because they have so slow roll rates by default, by design, that INAV starts to struggle again without proper tuning.
Sounds okay. Interesting. So that's what else? I mean, the auto-tune process is absolutely fantastic, and a lot of people who've struggled with INAV in the past have said that this is like night and day better. So besides the auto-tune process, which I do thank you, I mean, I think you were one of the people when working with Andrew Newton on one of his twin planes, which the Mini Crosswind Mini was the start of this whole thing. I was going down the road trying to fix the rates because he had issue with rates, right?
It was mostly a rate issue on his pitch axis, yes, because that was the main issue why it was oscillating on the on navigation mode or in general on alt hold before. But it was also oscillating in angle mode, if I remember correctly. And yeah, I would say that was some kind of spark that made all the things explode, and where I said, okay, I met up with Alex on chat and we talked about that and how can we optimize that, because we had so many reports in the group always with things like these pitch oscillations on different plane, especially the recent generations of the twin motor planes that have very high power, so they even if they pitch up, they just keep their airspeed. They have so much static thrust, they just keep the airspeed even when they pitch up. And at these constant speeds, if the pitch angle is not tuned well, it just starts to going up and down all the time in navigation modes. And it was always the pitch rate. It was always the same issue. And that And with Andrew's case, then when we worked on that, he still also found out that his pitch servo had an issue, so we never were able to completely fix that without the servo replacement. And yeah, that's how the idea was born, to automatically adjust the rates to get rid of all these issues.
Okay, now you mentioned servos. And we talked about this in the past, but with this new auto-tune, is the importance of the servo, for example, if you're going from like a 5 volt to a 6 volt or a 7.2 volt servo, are you, especially ones that are digital, are we starting to see the improvements with INAV?
No, actually not, because the autotune is still a very, let's say, simple algorithm. So all it does is it tunes the feed forward value automatically. So it adjusts the control surface throw based on the feed forward and combined with P to reach the target rates, to have the set point and the real rate matching as close as possible. But the P value and also the D value are still generated in a very simple way. So the P value is just 10% of the feed forward. That's a fixed value. It will rise and go down with the feed forward together. And the D value, that's actually helping you to lock your attitude when you release the sticks in acro mode. Is calculated on a base of timing difference between the set point rate is met at a specific feed forward and how fast the I-term can react. I have no idea how it works in the background, but it is still a very simple algorithm that's working there in the background. If you want to really get the best out of your tune and you want to have a plane that is well tuned for windy conditions, as stable as possible, and only as locked in as needed, but still very responsive and drifty, like a plane without stabilized flight controller, you still have to tune it, the PI and the new D term manually. That's not tuned automatically.
It's worth saying there, though, that if you do tune all of those manually, then yes, you will see the advantage of faster digital, higher voltage servos and stuff, even with old INAV.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you have very high quality and fast and powerful servos, you can, for example, use higher P values and also add the D value.
Yeah, particularly now we've got D value again. Really fast servo is going to be a big help.
So when is that new D value coming in? Because it was supposed to be an INAV 3.0, and then I guess it got pushed back a bit, or it was toned down somewhat. It was supposed to be a PID feed forward.
It's in 3.0. It's not auto-tuned in 3.0.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So are they going to auto-tune it in 3.1? Is that kind of the plan right now?
I don't know. Heard any discussion, but I'd guess that D would be a derivative term would be very hard to auto-tune with an aeroplane. So maybe, but
yeah, because I would say I have tested the D value only on small planes yet. So on the 250G and the Dart 250, Talon 250G, and I tried to find some kind of relationship level, like between feed forward and P. I tried to find a relationship between P and D that is stable, but it's so different on even those two planes, and also between pitch and roll, just a little bit too much D gain, and this plane very rapidly starts to oscillate. I have not found a way yet to automatically tune that.
Okay. Interesting.
It can quickly get very unstable.
So Darren, our friend Henrik is celebrating a wedding anniversary tonight, so he's been excused. And I do appreciate the fact that someone wants to be married to him for such a long period of time. So my respect for this woman, though I've never met her before in my life. But Henrik is a very big fan about servos. So can you speak on Henrik's behalf as to why? I mean, because there was a post about a month ago which was, hey, should I just use the 5 volts regulator on my flight controller, or do I need to worry about the 6 volts or 7.2 volts? And I figure that's this is a perfect time to talk about this, and you can speak on Henrik's behalf here.
Oh, I don't know about that. Henrik will just go mad with whatever I say. To be honest, I think it's a bit inconsiderate getting married on a weekday that could be a 3rd Sunday of a month. It's just not on Henrik. But no, it's. I mean, personally, I always put my servos on 6 volt if it will take it, because you get extra speed and extra torque for not really much at all, really. But yeah, I mean, I use digital servos. I used to use the analog metal geared, but now I'm sort of sticking with digital. Get the refresh up to 330 hertz. So.
Hey Darren, I think your microphone's coming out of your camera. So you sound kind of
camera.
Yeah, you sound kind of muddled. So we'll work on that but yeah, there's what you're saying though is like there are some servos, for example, I believe I saw one of you have like about 1,000 videos, which are fantastic, but one of them you did all these servo comparisons, and one of them was servo comparison with the Tower Pro 90G S, whatever it is. That's that metal MG90S.
Yeah, it's the MG90S, which is absolute shit.
Yeah, but you're showing it on 5 volts and 6 volts, and the 6 volts you said it was much worse.
Actually, no. I've got 2 videos, and I found out when I did one, the problem was actually the servo tester I was using. I was using the Corona that was on. I think it's the 939 MG or something like that. And I was getting really weird results with that. But as soon as I went from using the servo tester to using a receiver, it was perfect. But yeah, everything on the MG90S was terrible. It didn't center properly. The torque just wasn't even up to the values that it's specified at. So yeah, I mean, Emacs over them any day. But the MG90D, like what's in that, are a hell of a lot better. And they're a similar sort of price to the Emacs ES08 MAs. Yeah, MA2s. Sorry.
I mean, the funny thing is, for these MG90s, you never know what manufacturer they even are. I think I have 3 different types of MG90 here. All have a different colored label and all have different quality. And I even have a very big, I think it's a 25-gram servo I use for the antenna tracker. And it's a Toward Pro, not Tower Pro, Toward Pro. So yeah, I really stopped buying these, and for cheap stuff I take the Emacs, and for the more expensive stuff like that's planned right now, I follow the guidelines from Henrik, and I will get some proper servos, even if they cost €20 per piece.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I bought those a long time ago, and I do tend to use the Emacs now for cheap servos. I mean, they've got decent potentiometers as well, which is a good thing. They use the Noble potentiometers, which you find usually in more expensive servos. But yeah, I've got the Wojtek as well for my Crosswind Mini on the elevator, because they're fast, metal geared, metal case, decent servos, and they're not a lot more, but it's worth doing.
I would even have used the AR-Ring Pro servos from Sonic model, but the problem is they are always out of stock. I think I waited 1.5 months for my order, and they were still not deliverable, so I had to cancel it, unfortunately.
Okay, so what you're saying now is when you know the plane, there's 2 things. See, the first thing was that I still have a few of these left. Watch Mark, he gets really mad when I hold these things up. It's just...
Yeah, these red boxes, I still have a few of them around here.
Yeah, they just kind of... I think they repopulate when I put them all in the same place, and they kind of grow over time. I don't order more; they just keep showing up, or I find more in my drawer. But yeah, the first thing Mark explained to me is whatever you do not put one of those red motors on your planes. And one of the points Mark made a while back, which is I think kind of an important point, was we're talking about PMP planes, we're talking about building your own. And I said the idea behind the kit is you can put your own stuff in there. And Mark said, yeah, but people put cheap stuff in there.
Yeah,
so if
I mean, often if I see some ZOHD or Sonic model builds and people buy a kit version, and then I look at the components they put in, and I said you could have just bought the plug and play version, and you would have better hardware in there. Absolutely. I mean, even as I said, I have some of these Racer Star motors, the BR series, laying around here from the autopilot copter I have. And after I think 2 motors, one motor died completely. One has totally rattling bearings, and the third one also makes noises. 2 of them are already replaced. And this copter was maybe in the air for 5 or 6 packs, and the motors are already done. And to be honest, that's absolutely unacceptable. If I look at the on my Speed AR ring, for example, there's the Racer Star RB motor on it. It had so many crashes already with the old fuselage, and now it's on the new fuselage. I landed in dirt. I landed in snow. It was so beaten up, and I think it has 30 or 40 packs of batteries through that motor on high throttle, high currents, right at the limit, and it's still working like a charm, like on day one. And so the Racer Star RB is not expensive, so in my opinion, it's much more valuable than these BR series.
Luke, there's no one here who knows more about motors and servos than Luke, because he does it for a living. So what are your feelings about people buying the Racer Star motor or in the cheap Tower Pro servos to put a plane together?
I wouldn't necessarily go as far as there's no one here who knows anything better, because I do it for a living. I don't know. I think they have a purpose. I have plenty of the cheap Racer Star motors on some of my planes, and the same with the cheap servos. It just depends what the plane's for. Particularly, I actually quite like using plastic gear servos just to save the weight. I'm not necessarily bothered about the longevity and stuff, where weight really is a big concern. Cheap motors, the bearings may not last very long, but if you're only planning on flying the plane 10 times before it's lost in the sea, it might be a good option. There's always considerations. And to be honest, I typically don't find that the cheap motors are all that bad, especially at the start. So, yeah, the bigger problems are normally inefficiencies and that kind of thing due to the design. So.
That's one thing that I was thinking of too, is that a lot of times these kits are still relatively inexpensive, even though they've been going up recently. Like the AR wing is still something, a kit you can get for around $60 US. So if you were to make an AR wing and you put the cheap stuff in it, the cheap servos and the cheap motor, but you take it out and you fly it until you get an idea if you really like this setup or not. If you really like a 2212 motor, then it's not very expensive for you to spend the extra $20 and buy one of the blue Sunny Sky motors and then put that in. Or maybe what you do is keep everything on this cheap plane, because you probably crashed it quite a few times. Buy the kit again and put the better quality stuff in for the next build.
Yeah, I mean, either do
really
that.
Like it.
Yeah, either do that, or like Mark says, if you're going to put cheap components in the plane, just get the PMP version, because you're probably going to get better components anyway, and it's going to be cheaper overall. And then gradually upgrade the components as you go along, as you have more money to spend on it, as you learn more about it, whatever. Yeah.
So what about a plane where you plan to keep more than 10 flights? What kind of servos do you put in? What kind of motor do you put in?
On planes, particularly planes I like, I do put nice quality components in, Savox servos, KST servos, whatever. I'm sure Henrik still doesn't think they're good servos, but that's what I have to settle with. Nicer motors. various brands. So yeah, it depends.
I mean,
Okay.
if you speak about cheap builds, I mean, just do the math. Even if you use very cheap but at least basic reliable hardware, you still end up with a plane at least at around $150-$160. I don't think that you can really build a plane unless you get some scrap parts from gifted by people. You cannot really build cheaper, and then I think the motor as the most important components on the plane. I wouldn't say just about $5 or so just to get a cheaper motor when I get a Sunny Sky instead. You know what I mean? That's just saving on the wrong end, in my opinion. I mean,
yeah. I think depending on how cheap you're trying to go, you have to save everywhere. I have quite a few planes, even with INAV and full FPV gear, probably come in under £50 or so. And that's just because they are fully expected to be lost or crashed or whatever by people that I'm teaching to fly, whatever it is. But then also planes that are functionally completely the same but cost upwards of $1,000 because they have the nice stuff on them. So it really just depends.
Fantastic. So back to INAV 3.0, what are the feelings like? What I can, from what we see, how it looks like. Well, the one thing I'd say that I was most shocked about is typically when you have a few changes, there's always a deal breaker, or all of a sudden it's a showstopper. We gotta stop. Everyone, don't use this firmware. We're coming out with the new firmware. Use that one. We didn't have any showstoppers with INAV 3.0 in the release candidates. So that was the one thing. There were 165 changes, and there was no real showstoppers. There was a few issues here and there, but nothing huge.
Yeah, I was also very impressed about that. I mean, the release candidates, everything that was made public, it stayed public. We found some issues, but nothing that could cause a plane loss or whatever. Maybe it could cause a bad tune or some weird behavior in some situations. But yeah, it was pretty much stable, and that's really impressive if you think about how many new features there are actually. There are after the release candidate and after the release and a lot of people now flying it. Yes, there are some edge cases where there is some trouble, like in the chat before someone mentioned the yaw axis tuning. Yes, yaw tuning is an issue right now. I wouldn't call it an issue. It's a little bit weird, because a lot of planes have very little authority on the yaw axis on the rudder, because they mostly induce a roll movement instead of an actual yaw movement. And but the roll movement that's induced by the rudder is compensated by the PIFF controller on the other hand. So you have very, very gentle turns around the yaw axis that's nearly impossible to tune. So the result is feed forward will go up to 255. We have a high P gain, high I gain. The plane still flies. You have your yaw stability that uses a lot of deflection. It flies stable, but it looks weird in the first place. And that's also a thing I'm in contact with Alex. We want to address in the future, and also work on some other small things that we can optimize, because right now after the release so many people are using it, so many people are reporting their experience now. Now we have to collect the information and check what can be made better for the next version. And I mean, the next version is not too far away. At least we don't have to wait for the next 6 months, hopefully. I mean, it will be released when the H7 support is ready. Then we will get our 3.1, and hopefully that's around the corner.
I mean, that's the thing, is that with release candidates, you do get a lot of people that don't really want to use them, or this one has seemed to be a lot of people wanted to use it, but you do get people that hold back to the stable release. So naturally, you're going to see more things crop up as more people are using it. But it's just the way it goes. But yeah, nothing really bad. The worst issue seems to be the flight controllers losing the settings, which is quite a strange thing. which has happened to a few people.
Yeah, but as we found out, this only seems to affect the Matic F411 WSE right now.
No, it's happened on F405 WSE, F765. I think I saw today. It's happening on different boards.
Okay, complete loss of configuration.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I think Alex had it on F405 WSE.
Okay.
That's why you need to back them up constantly.
Well, not constantly. Just when you do your first setup, back it up, and then after your auto tune, do a backup, and then you should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Well, whenever I get to a computer and plug the plane in, I always back up the settings. So it's good. One thing I wanted to ask you guys about, it was something I've been thinking about over the past month, which is just kind of my thought about where INAV is right now and where it's heading. And so where it's at right now, INAV is not exactly fully baked. But it's a lot more baked on INAV 3.0 than it was on INAV 2.61. And at some point, we're getting closer to that point where pretty much the way it is the way it's going to continue to be for quite a while as far as the core build of INAV. Are we getting close to that point right now?
Oh, was that to me? Sorry, I was distracted by the chat right now.
Okay. Well, my question was, as far as INAV, when you went from INAV 2.6 to INAV 3.0, we had, it seems like what this version of INAV we have right now is a lot more what we call fully baked. It's getting to the point where you see this also in software development. Like, for example, Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word really changed all that much over the last 10 years? Is the core component of Microsoft Word is probably where it's been 15 years ago. They just kind of keep adding other stuff on top of it. At some point, the core component of Microsoft Word was fully baked. Are we getting to that point, or close to that, with INAV 3.0, with INAV, where we're getting to something that this is the way it's going to be going forward? This is how INAV works.
I would say there's nothing very big that will change in the heart of INAV, for example. It's just a continuous development. So and the decision what version number each version gets, is just made based on the feature set. If it's a very big jump like this time, then of course the developers make a bigger jump. But I know that I think Pavel and also Konstantin, they want to make some cleanups in the core, because there are some old code sometimes that's not used anymore, or some things that can be done better today because the development environment has changed. They have no commands that they can work on, and I think a lot of focus in the future will also be on the configurator. The configurator, it uses a very old framework right now, and a lot of things are done in multiple different ways because a lot of developers worked on that. One does something in this way and one does something in this way. And if I understand correctly, but please don't quote me here, it's nothing official right now, there is someone working on a complete rework of the INAV configurator. Based on I'm not sure if it is a completely different framework they want to use, or he wants to use, the developer, or if it's still based on the same one and just rewritten. But yeah, there's something coming in the future, but I have no idea when.
Yeah, I think that is a completely different framework. But yeah, I agree with Mark. I think most of it's going to be an evolution until possibly when we get to maybe sort of dual core H series or using a different architecture. I think there could be some sort of big changes in the core at that point.
Yeah, that's what got me thinking about this, is the H series, because what the H series really has to offer is you can hook up a lot of things, up to 32 different devices on the H series, and they just kind of plug in. And Paul was showing that in one of his videos not too long ago about how you can plug in airspeed sensor into the GPS. So
Oh, that's just using the CAN bus.
The CAN bus. What is that CAN bus? Couldn't find anything about that.
It's basically a control bus where you daisy chain the devices up. So it's similar to I2C, but better. Similar in a way to UARTs, I guess. But it's basically just daisy chaining devices, but they all talk through the same wire network on the same port. They all have IDs, and so that's why you can put. I think you can put the airspeed sensor onto the GPS that then talks through CAN to the flight controller, and you can chain up other devices too. But what I was more thinking about was the dual core, which is, I think, a higher series of the H series. So you actually have two processors. So one could be doing filtering, for example, and the other one doing the core flying. So that way they can build more complex algorithms into it and get something even more advanced going on.
That's, by the way, something I think, if I understand that correctly, one reason why the H7 support is lagging behind so much. We know Betaflight was pretty fast on supporting H7 CPUs, but what they made is basically they took all the code, just made the necessary changes and throw them on the H7 boards, and that's it. So, but that's a very inefficient way because they don't make any advantage of the benefits of the H7 processors. They have some co-processing units on board. I'm not too deep into details here to explain that more detailed. But Pavel showed something, I think it was in the live stream or in a separate video, where he showed an F722 or F765 flight controller, just with the basic setup, just the basic sensors, everything clean beside that. And he had I think it's 96 microseconds time per pit loop. And then he made the same version on an H7 with the optimizations that are already in there. And he had a loop time of 26 microseconds. So basically the processor, even with the same core clock it has, was nearly four times faster than the F7. So INAV will make use of these processing power and of these new features, what Betaflight, for example, didn't do.
That was kind of the thing I was looking at. It was that when you look at the processors, what's happening is why we're getting all these advancements in flight controllers processors is because they're being used elsewhere. They're being used for automotive industry and they're being used for medical industry. And the demand is insane. It's double-digit growth for the rest of this decade is what's projected with this particular thing. But the thing that's interesting is that the F405 wing, which is still sold today, it came out in 2018. So you're looking at 3-year-old technology, which, 18 months is when things kind of go obsolete. You're almost like at a double 18-month, and it's still a viable thing. What I'm thinking is when this core is finally done, or to the point where it's close enough to being done, we are going to switch over to the point where the developers are going to say, let's take advantage of all this cool new technology. And pretty soon you're going to be like getting to the point where you're going to need to start swapping out flight controllers. And we have not, the only thing the whole time the group has been around that's been obsoleted was the F3 processor. That I believe in INAV 3.0 no longer has the update for the F3 processor. It was 2.61 was the last one. Mark's shaking his head yes. So they announced at 2.1 this will be the last, and they kept it going for 5 more versions. But do you see a point in coming up here pretty soon when we start jumping into these H3 processors where all of a sudden the next version INAV means you need to get rid of your F4 boards?
No. The problem or the funny thing is actually it's not the processing power the processors are lacking. Even an F3 processor would easily be possible to handle all the features INAV has today without any limitation. The problem is really the memory, the flash storage and the RAM that is used. And that was the limitation on the F3. An F1 processor would be overloaded for sure. But the F3 had a lot of reserves. I mean, I think the F3 and the F4 actually have basically the same core speed. I might be wrong about that. Maybe Darren knows better right now. F3 and F7, I think F3 and F4, I think they have basically the same core clock, right? Or the calculation. Yeah. Okay, I have to look that up. But yeah, that's not the problem. I mean, we have F411, we have F405, we have F722, we have F765, and we have even F745, I think. But these are usually only used on some quad flight controllers. They are all so powerful that they will run the next maybe INAV 4 or INAV 5 features, whatever will come. But the next generation of flight controllers that will be deprecated are the F411s and the F722, and they will likely lack future support at the same time, because both have only 512 kilobytes of flash memory. And at some point, INAV will just be too big to fit on the storage.
So it's the F411 you said, and which of the other one?
F411 and F722. These will be the next flight controllers that will get limited support. But
interesting.
I don't know when. Pavel said they will be with us for a while still, and maybe in 1 or 2 years or so.
Interesting. Oh, good to know. So as a closeout on INAV 3.0, is there anything else you'd like to add? Anything, Mark? Any other thoughts?
Yeah, nothing too much. I think we have talked in the last stream a lot about all the new features that came up. I mean, for everything that's looking the stream right now, look at Darren's video. He made a fantastic, complete sum up of all the new features and described them in detail. So it's a pretty complete list of everything that's interesting for us as ring pilots.
Oh, by the way, the crash with INAV is really cruise hold with INAV. So just that's the abbreviation for cruise hold.
Actually, course hold.
Course hold.
Course hold, yeah.
Course hold.
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, Luke, are you going to use INAV 3.0 at any point in the future?
I'm sure we'll at some point. To be honest, I haven't even flashed INAV 3.0 on a board. I've been very busy recently, so.
Yeah, you're busy with work and stuff like that. Okay, cool. Darren, anything you'd like to add before we jump off this? We're going to take a break here in a minute.
Not really. Just if people are interested in that updates, there's also the document on inavfixedwinggroup.com where it's got all the links to the pull requests. So if people want to look at something more in depth, they can check that out and get all the information they need.
Okay, cool. Well, we're going to take a 90-second break, and I do need 90 seconds. We're going to get a chance to freshen up, and we'll be right back, and we're going to talk to Rory. So please stick around. Hey everybody, welcome back to Wing Talk. Oh, our special guest today is a gentleman from the UK who has been with us for about 9 months in the INAV Fixed Wing group, and the guy does some really interesting things, and so I want to find out more about him. So this is the notorious Rory G, and he is going to show us some of the things he's working on, including this big plane sitting next to him. It looks like a bunch of wood sitting next to him. So, Rory, what is this thing I'm looking at right next to you?
All right, guys. Right. Yeah, this thing right here is a large or a giant scale tiger moth. It'll have a 3-meter wingspan with a length around about 2.5 meters long. Fabric covered, petrol engines, kind of, thing with redundant power and receiving systems, just all that kind of fancy stuff. So
fantastic. Petrol. So what kind of motor are we talking about?
Oh gosh, yeah. Hold on, it's back there. I can't get it. It's sort of 38cc petrol engine with reduction gear. It's a big lump. It's like a moped engine.
I was going to say that's like a mini bike motor, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it's gonna have some punch. I'll tell you what. When in a minute, there's the propeller for it. I'll get the propeller. You guys will. Everyone's used to kind of 7-8 inch props for their planes, 9 maybe, but this is a 32.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
To be honest, that 38 is smaller than I was expecting. I was expecting about a 50cc or something, but no, that's cool.
Yeah, well,
I suppose it's geared, I guess.
It's you can put a 60 in it, but the reduction gear in the large prop kind of it gives it so much power. It will just have lots of performance just through the gearing. So the size of the engine is, it's not too bad.
Oh, it'd be cool.
Mm-hmm.
How much fuel can that thing hold?
Sorry, Steve, what was that?
How much fuel can that hold?
Yeah.
Besides the bladder.
It'll be around about 500 milliliters.
Wow, half a liter. Oof,
yeah.
Geez.
Yeah, and that should be good for maybe 15, 20 minutes tops, depending on how you fly it.
Okay, so yeah, there's somebody I know who flies the 60-inch ones, and he says he's using about an ounce a minute as his average use for petrol. Mm-hmm. We haven't seen a lot of people using INAV with petrol things that will it work okay? That's one of the questions I have.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing I was thinking about. Because I've seen people asking a few times. Can you use it with glow engine planes? Can you use it with petrol planes? The thing to consider, obviously, is the vibrations of big single-cylinder engines that, in themselves could shake airframes to pieces. But yeah, it's a consideration. So what I was thinking of doing was running basically sort of a manual flight system and having INAV in the camera fittings, because basically I want to FPV this thing, whether it will be for flying or for ride-alongs, so that would be good for that, and also sort of telemetry data as well, because I would really like to have a fully working or almost fully working dashboard instrument panel in the aircraft, run by INAV with the, in combination with INAV's logical conditions and the TX's logic switches and all this kind of stuff to do with the output, the telemetry data to the servo pins on the flight controller.
So can you show us that? Yeah, look at that. That's amazing.
I want to get it sent to this, and I will replace these fake dials with real working ones, so that could be really cool. You can just imagine getting a DJI or a SharkBite system, sitting there and high def shots of the Tiger Moth cockpit and everything going on. It'd just be unreal. I mean, I did do it. It must have been about seven years ago now, maybe, with a little 1.5 meter Tiger Moth with a 3 3-axis head tracker system. It was unbelievable. The most real flight experience FPV I've ever had. Actually got a little bit airsick sitting on the ground with my goggles on. It was just untrue.
So we should like back up a little bit and let people know that you actually have a pretty long history with FPV and fixed wings. So can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I guess I kind of started with RC a long time ago. It must have been 2005, 2006 maybe. I decided it was a good idea to teach myself collective pitch helicopter flying. Yeah, and as you can imagine,
how much that cost you?
Went really well. About 2 seconds. Yeah, it kind of lifted off. You know, I did plenty of times on the sims, as you do, and I thought, yeah, I could get a teacher, but you know, I'll wing it and just try it. And yeah, it didn't go so well, but I didn't give up. I kept on flying it and repairing it, obviously, and eventually I ended up with a T-Rex 600 electric thing with a rotor disc about 1.2 meters across, doing crazy RPMs, and that was a scary thing. That was a very scary thing, to be standing anywhere near that when that spooled up and the blades were just getting faster and faster and faster. You just think, oh my god, what have I done?
I was next to someone who flew a 600 or 650 millimeter heli inside a sports hall where we were flying with our 3-inch quads, and
oh my god,
this was also really scary when the copter was just, I think, 3 or 4 meters, maybe 5 meters away from you, and he is flipping and upside down and forward and backward the whole time, and that inside this gym. By the way, I have a question about that front panel. Your cockpit panel.
Yeah.
As far as I understand, you want to make it completely analog, so with real dials and control by servos.
Yeah, well, I haven't quite got the kind of ins and outs of it sussed yet, because it's kind of in the distant future, as it were. Because as you can see, the plane, you can put your hand straight way through it. You know, it's not ready yet. But yeah, I kind of want to pop these dials out and either make my own with kind of servos and some gears to, you know, move the dials around. But I seem to remember bookmarking the other month. I think it was a German chap. He's got a site where he actually builds miniature working flight instrumentation. So you know, maybe I can talk to him about integrating his systems with an INAV kind of output.
Yes, there is. That's why I'm asking you. There's I think it's a German company, and they make complete scale cockpits also, and they use small OLED screens. With a microcontroller in the background, and I think a well-made round OLED screen with a real black, because you don't have this shining through of backlight or so, could look really realistic, especially in an FPV cam. And you can feed that microcontroller just with Mavlink telemetry, and you can get that from INAV straight away.
Yeah, that could be definitely an option. Yeah, absolutely. And then I also remember seeing another chap. He was doing a similar sort of thing with his telemetry and OLED screens and things like that. So yeah, there's different avenues to approach it, I'm sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, fully analog would be, of course, the most the most interesting thing to have.
That would be the most authentic. Yes. Yes, absolutely. And it'd be kind of an interesting use for an INAV board, you know, beyond a kind of a flight controller or FPV system.
Sure. Speaking about flight controllers and your history of flight controllers, can you tell us your previous work way back when, like 10 years ago, with a certain company?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be the only UK beta tester for Eagle Tree Systems, and I basically helped the guys develop the vector system, and I helped them kind of fine tune the multi-rotor platform and their fixed wing platform, obviously, and I had it plugged into that Z2 up the top there. Helped them with a bit of user interface stuff, with the menu systems, just very basic stuff, really. But more, than most things I did was help them tune the fixed wing stuff and get it going nicely. So that was kind of a privilege.
So this was back in 2014, 2013 timeframe?
Yeah, it was a long time ago now. Jeez.
Yeah, and you were so that, I mean, a lot of the stuff we take for granted now, you really didn't have, like the gyros were something big, because up to this point, weren't people pulling them out of Nintendo Wii chucks?
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. It was, if you wanted it, you had to build it yourself, or rip it out and hack it together out of existing tech that was, available, but was not meant for FPV and all that kind of thing. And I think I basically started flying FPV. I think I got my first FPV system in 2009, and that got put onto the T-Rex 600 actually, because I was going to use it as a camera ship, because you couldn't get stable quads, so much then, and there was no kind of position hold or anything, and it was just a gyro on the tail and everything, and it was just crazy. But I think the first flying wing I put a FPV system on was maybe 2011, something like that. Little Hobby King job, flew okay, but I went a bit too fast with it and ripped an elevon off, and it sort of lawn darted into the ground. End of that one.
So so I love how we think in terms of, like, for everything else, like if you think about music, 2009, 2010 wasn't a lot long ago, but when you think about FPV, that was like turn of the century kind of thing. It's, oh my gosh, that's, went back to the late 1800s. I can't believe you're flying that stuff back then.
Yeah, exactly, precisely. The technology has come on so much. You get receivers the size of your thumbnail. Whereas before, I used to fly Easy UHF, and it was almost the receiver was almost the size of a packet of cigarettes, and just stuff like that, and video transmitters that were huge and had massive heat sinks and big fans on them and everything like that, and there was no reverse polarity protection, so the one and only time you lost concentration and plugged your cables in backwards, that was it. Magic smoke time. Flight control, video transmitter dead. So it was just, the tech was just very much in the early stages.
So why did you step away from it? Because you took quite a while off, and like better part of 10 years.
Yeah, it was just, way things go. Sometimes you just lose a bit of interest. Sometimes you think, yeah, I've done that. Just other times you just kind of, it was a bit sad, because sometimes I'd just go out flying and I think, it's not the buzz it used to be. So I thought, give it a bit of a break, concentrate on other things. I mean, the passion was always there. And I ideally missed the planes and flying. It was just waiting again for the right time to start it up again, and I saw some of the technology and the products that were coming out these days. Like the TBS stuff and some of the new Fast Sharks and the DJI equipment. And I just thought, man, I need to get back. There's some interesting stuff going on here. And then all the Maytech stuff and the INAV, of course. That was one of the main reasons. I saw some of the things that were possible with that, because I thought, we'll get back with an Eagle Tree Vector, and I was surprised to see that they were still there, still flying them, and nothing had kind of progressed, beyond what they had to start with, and everybody else had kind of, where they were leading to start, and everyone else has kind of caught them up and overtook them, and just didn't quite do enough.
What's really interesting is the group started at the very end. It was December of 2018. And around 2019, we had Christian Moe, who was out of Norway, who was building the S800 over and over again. And he was doing different things with it. He was kind of fine-tuning it. And then he disappears for like pretty much all of 2020. And then I contacted him and say, hey, we're working on Project Rosetta Stone. Can you help us out with the S800? And he was like, he was doing other things. He was gaming and doing other things. And he started to look at what is going on. And that year he took off. And the next thing you know, his wife is ready to kill me because there's so much stuff showing up to his house. All these new planes. And all of a sudden, he's like 5 times more excited about INAV than he ever was. So is this like the best time to be an FPV, you think?
Oh yeah, definitely, absolutely. It's just amazing. Stuff's come on leaps and bounds, and even the short time I've been back flying and doing FPV, and especially with being on board with INAV, the system has come on so much and has improved so greatly, even through for the few versions that I've seen, and the performances of the aircraft that I've flown with it have just been improved immeasurably. So while it was good when I first downloaded it, but version 3 I'm just over the moon with. It's fantastic firmware. The features are great. The plane just feels so much more reliable than anything else. And when you flick a mode on, it's not going to drift. It's not going to kind of dolphin on on a good tune. Just really impressed with it, and that's what you want when you have a flight controller like that. You're gonna some of the guys, they fly out kilometers and kilometers, and you want to know that when you get a failsafe or when you flip that switch, that thing is going to turn around and come back home, and in a couple of minutes you're going to see it flying above your head. And that to me is one of the most important things, because with Eagle Tree, that's what I had. It was a definite 100% return, because I even had a head-on collision with 2 Z2s, a friend of mine. We were flying, and we were a comfortable distance away, and we were looking for each other. We're both circling around, and we happened to be both circling around at the same altitude, and 120 miles an hour closing speed. We were both doing 60 miles an hour, head-on, nose to nose, with these 2 flying wings, and mine completely ripped his in half, clean in half. You see on the video feed from the GoPro the fiberglass spars just shattering and splintering away, and his receiver just disappearing off out of frame. You just think, oh no, and it just spiraling down. And the poor guy, he had only just rebuilt it, and it was like 2 flights in, and I ripped it clean in half for him, and I was just so mortified. But at the same time, when we were flying, my screen had gone dark. It was black, and we were going, oh dear, that's not good. So but the system, it righted the plane and brought it back. It was flying overhead in a few seconds.
So do you think now the flight controllers with INAV 3, this is over and above anything that Eagle Tree has done in the past?
I think it's definitely on par with it, absolutely. And the features that have been implemented in the latest release are fantastic. And I think, because obviously
there's a lot of work to make Eagle Tree get to that point, and so it's just good that INAV is at least at this point and going further.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And the flight system that that I was using, it was the Maytech F765, really kind of does a good job, and it's fast processors and stuff. So I like the system. It's really good. And it's kind of made me jump from the Eagle Tree kind of team, as it were. And this was before they went under. And I thought, one was the price point, and 2 was the features of INAV, and the kind of the support, and how much the community was behind it, and what sort of updates were coming and things like that. Okay,
fantastic. So now we've got a lot of people coming in from Eagle Tree, and that seemed kind of like well, I guess it's kind of like we have no place to go. We'd like to come in here to INAV. So what can you say to these people who found their way over to us from Eagle Tree, as a guy who was a leader of Eagle Tree at one point?
Yeah, well, maybe not quite a leader, but
a thought leader,
an advocate of
advocate. Yeah,
we'll say that. Yeah, it's definitely a fantastic alternative. I think it's going definitely in the right direction, and I think if it's not surpassed the standard of Eagle Tree now, it soon will do, without a doubt. But yeah, I mean, it's go with confidence.
There's one thing on Eagle Tree. I'm not sure. I've not used it for myself ever, but I think Eagle Tree Vector had something like an in-flight on-screen menu you can open and tune everything in flight. With the INAV, we have the adjustments. We can now, since 2.6, adjust up to 20 items, but we have to arrange them all on the OSD to see what we are doing and all that stuff. But actually, that's a thing I have already opened in a feature request on GitHub. Maybe some developer will find to make that. To have a customized tuning or a customized adjustment OSD in INAV. So similar like the disarmed OSD menu you can open and then scroll through with your sticks. The plan is to have a complete menu with a list of all the items, and then you just have in the configurator a complete list, and you just enable all the items you want. And then you can just open it in flight, scroll through it, and then change the values that you want. I hope this will come sometime to INAV in this form.
Yeah, I think that would be a really, really good addition. I mean, what it was with the Eagle Tree one is you had to use a 3-position switch and have it programmed, and in a certain way. So you do the first 2 positions to move the selector, the flashing menu item, and then up to the 3rd to select it. And yeah, it was a bit confusing. So I think, maybe while that idea is really good, and I did use it a few times, it did get a bit tricky trying to remember, if I flick it this way, will I turn my receiver type to S-bus or something?
Yes. So Darren, you play with the Eagle Tree. I don't know how deep you got into it.
Yeah, I mean, I've flown one. My Goblin's got an Eagle Tree. The Mini Drak's got an Eagle Tree. So I've had a couple of flights. Yeah, actually, the last flight I had with it was with my Ranger, and return to home didn't actually work. That one was a bit disappointing. But yeah, I mean, it's a good system. The OSD was leading the way for a long time, to be honest. I mean, it wasn't quite so configurable, but in other ways it was more configurable because you could change colors of things, and it was just the positioning of elements that wasn't quite so good. But yeah, it's still really nice OSD.
Yeah, it's a lovely looking thing.
Yeah, I think like the first 6 months of the group, someone mentioned in the group, he said, I know it's kind of cute, but there's nothing better than the Eagle Tree. And then there's like 5 people, yeah, you're right about that, and whatever. So it's kind of, it's fun to see how fast INAV has picked up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I haven't missed an Eagle Tree system in my planes since having INAV. That's kind of the key line there is you don't miss it.
For the cost of those vectors, you can build a whole plane practically.
Yeah.
So the inexpensiveness is fantastic as well. Sitting right next to you, you have the FrSky X12S. So,
yeah. This is a monster of a radio.
Can you tell us about that? I mean, because that's something that's interesting. I know you've been showing this quite a bit in the group and talking about it and what you plan to do with it and all this other stuff. Can you get into that and tell us why you love this so much?
Well, namely it's the build quality and the kind of the scale and the weight of it. If you notice, it's a wider radio than say an X9D. and things like that. It's just the controls and everything are just really laid out really nicely, and I really like the machined metal dials and stuff, and sliders are really good. And yeah, and I know it's like the X20, the new X20 with the screen on top, which I think is a really good way to have your radio, because when you're flying, you've got your neck strap on, and maybe you want to look at the screen or check your telemetry or something, and you end up having to peer around your neck strap or look kind of down right at your chest to see your screen and your telemetry. But if it's at the top here, it's a quick glance down and a quick back under the goggles, or a quick look back up into the sky to see your line of sight model or something.
I'm just waiting for a mod for the TX16S where you remove the screen from the bottom and put it into a 3D printed housing at the top. That would be amazing.
Yeah, that would be great. The only thing I'm missing on this is obviously the touchscreen. There's no touchscreen on this one, and as is with all the Horus radios. So yeah, I want the mod with the TX16 screen that can go in here.
You get that in the 20S though. That's pretty. It's interesting.
Is this one,
that is. Go ahead.
Is this one running with Ethos or with OpenTX?
I've got OpenTX on this one. I've got the was it the ISRM installed with the Para Bluetooth module. So it was actually a factory access radio rather than an upgrade. And it came direct from FrSky with those units in and OpenTX installed.
What that means is it runs access on 2.4 gigahertz.
Yeah, exactly, on the internal module. But the only thing is it will need an external access mod to run it in the module bay as well for the was it R9M 2019 units, that kind of thing.
Best mod ever. Who needs UART anyway at the bottom?
yeah, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just a fantastic radio. You know, in terms of kind of build quality and usability. And I had to make a few mods to it because I found, you know, when you pop Crossfire in there, it can buzz a little bit. You hear some radio interference coming through the speakers. You're two down the bottom here. So I had to put a ferrite ring on the speaker feeds and try to put a bit of grounded shielding inside the radio to try and reduce that kind of stray noise. But what it turned out to be is that the radio's got a headphone jack kind of right up here near the screen. And what's right next to the headphone jack near the screen, namely the 2.4 antennas, the internal ones, and then the external jack here, and then the module bay with the Crossfire antenna right next to it. So what actually happens is the traces on the boards, the screen boards, carry the traces for the headphone jack as well. And it picks up all the interference off of these traces and runs it all the way back down to the main board onto the audio chip legs for that, and it introduces a lot of noise. So I actually ordered a new ribbon cable that links the screen board to the main board and cut out with a very strong magnifying glass and a sharp knife the traces for the jack channels, you know, to remove the functionality, and that reduced the introduced RF noise by a significant margin.
But that's something I absolutely don't get in my head. I mean, I understand my first FrSky radio was an X9D, the first generation back then from 2016. There was no R9 around. Crossfire was brand new on the market. I understand that this had noise issues with 900 megahertz. Then the X9D Plus came out, still was buzzing on Crossfire and on R9. Then the X9D Plus SE came out. It's still buzzing on Crossfire and on R9. And just last Sunday, I was flying together with a friend who was flying quads on R9 on an X10S. That's a pretty new radio. It was still buzzing like hell. I don't get why FrSky can't get this buzzing and these interference issues sorted out. I mean, I have a TX16S that's half the price of your radio, and there's no buzzing. I can go full power on R9. I can go to 2 watt on Crossfire. I have not a single noise on the speaker. Everything is fine. Just FrSky is not getting this sorted out.
Yeah, in FrSky's defense, actually, I have here another radio of theirs, which is the X9D, remember the name, plus 2019 SE, and this one is as silent as the grave. There is not a single buzz or RF interference noise on it whatsoever. So they did get it right with this one.
At least one.
At least one, yes, at least one. But I think the issue is what happens with the X12S and probably the other radios as well. The audio chip that's in this, it has a shutdown pin on it. And actually, it's a problem with OpenTX, where they don't utilize that shutdown when there's no audio being played. Because FrSky, when they did the FrOS, it doesn't buzz. If you run one of these on FrOS, there's no buzzing noise. It's because they utilize the shutdown pin on the audio amp. But OpenTX doesn't do that. So the amp is always running, it's always on, it's always outputting to the speakers. So you hear this constant droning buzz noise. So if OpenTX utilized that, it would cure it. It would completely cure it. And just, run the amp when there's a need to, there's actually open issues on GitHub about it. But I think everybody's kind of busy with the new X20 and OpenTX and all the other kind of stuff to deal with maybe a minority on X12S radios.
I think, but that's interesting because on my TX16S, I think the audio channel is also always open. Because if I use the X Lite with my R9 module on 500 milliwatts or 1 watt power, and I hold the antenna close to the front of the TX16S, then it's actually buzzing. Then I hear a very, very faint humming noise.
Okay.
So the buzzing is still there, but at least from the back it's shielded so well, so it doesn't matter during normal operation.
Maybe the manufacturers intentionally put some shielding or kind of something like that in from the rear. I mean, I know when I first got back into flying again after the break, I actually had one of my old Easy UHF transmitters, and even I think you pop that up to high power, and it was actually on this radio, it would skip the rudder trim all the way by itself, which was a scary thing. You just hear this beep, 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 maximum trim reached. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of radios, has any one of you tried HTX already?
No.
With the release candidate? Because I think now that HTX is around the corner, I think the release is planned for tomorrow, 21st of June, one of the developers wrote. And I tried it recently. I mean, you may have seen the video on the Fixed Wing group. And I think this will be, for a lot of people, really a game changer. Not only because you can now touch your screen on the Radio Master and Jumper radios if you have upgraded the touchscreen, but I think also the performance of the operating system and the revamped UI they made, that's really a great thing, and I'm looking forward to that release. The only downside is right now the firmware has developed faster than the OpenTX companion and also faster than their building environment, because right now they will release the firmware as it is, and we don't have these build flags you can select in OpenTX before you flash your radio, where you can say you want no Healy mixers, you want Lua enabled and all that stuff. Because right now I cannot enable my Bluetooth and my R9 access mod for my TX16S. So that was the only reason why I had to go back to OpenTX. Otherwise, I would use it already.
So this is not OpenTX. What is this?
It's HTX, but it's based on OpenTX 2.3.11 with some of the code of 2.3.12 taken over too, but with a completely new or completely reworked user interface. It's not completely new. The structure is the same, but a lot of rework was done to be fully touch compatible.
Interesting. So Darren, what do you think? Because Darren's kind of like a radio guru here. You're running both Ethos, and then you're starting to see that we're having new OpenTX models coming out and all the features and stuff like that. Which direction are you going to be heading?
I will try HTX. I mean, I'm going to obviously stick with Ethos on the X20S because I can't use OpenTX on it anyway. But yeah, Ethos is coming along and it's interesting seeing the progress. But with my other radios, I think I'm going to wait until the build environment's there for HTX. I mean, I am interested in trying it, but I think where I haven't got a touchscreen, I'm not going to see quite so many advantages as Marc has seen. But yeah, I really want those options there, and also the configurator, so it's really easy to back up models and go switch between whatever I want to use. But yeah, I'm looking forward to trying it out.
So what about your X10? Which one would you use? Would you going to use Ethos, or are you going to stick with OpenTX, or are you going to go to XTX?
At the moment, I'm going to stick with OpenTX or HTX because there are some things that are still missing for me in Ethos. Obviously, I can't use my Crossfire with it at the moment, which I know that is coming in the future. But also, there's some of the programming things that aren't quite there with Ethos. So global variables are a big one where they just don't work the same as OpenTX, and I can't get them to do the things that are really simple to do in OpenTX. So for stuff like the INAV Fixed Wing Group Pro model, really needs those global variables to be working as they are. So that will definitely be staying on OpenTX or HTX. But yeah.
Sorry, Marc, what were you saying?
Yeah, I'm really impressed. I mean, I don't know when the developer group that makes HTX right now, when they have taken over the OpenTX code to start the development, but I think it's really impressive that they managed in a few months what the OpenTX development team didn't manage in 2 years. Because I mean, just take OpenTX 2.4 and their promise of the new GUI on touch support, on support for the FrSky NV14 Nirvana radio and all that stuff. They promised that, I think, late summer 2019, and still there's no real progress on 2.4. It's stuck since half a year on 84% or so. And now HTX comes around the corner, and here it is. Look, it works. So, I mean, the FrSky Nirvana is still not supported. I think that will come in a later release. But they say it will come, and just by looking at how fast they progress right now, I think that will come in the next few months.
So Rory,
a lot of that code could have already been there, so it wasn't like a big sort of thing. They probably just took some of 2.4 and put it into their release. Because the way I see it is, it's like the old Clean Flight and Beta Flight. So Clean Flight is effectively the OpenTX repository, and then HTX is more of a beta flight where it's more the cutting edge sort of stuff, which will eventually filter down into OpenTX. That's the way I see their builds going.
I hope sooner than later.
Rory, I got a question for you. You were talking about the gimbals on the 12S.
Yeah.
You're making a big deal about that. Can you tell us what you're doing with those?
Oh,
not the gimbals. I mean, there was one thing. There was like a little joystick on there.
Oh yeah. This little guy right here. This little. Everyone thinks it's like a switch or a little push button thing, but it's not. It's a completely proportional little joystick that you can kind of a miniature kind of one of these basically. So you can do all kinds of stuff with it. You can turn it into a pan and tilt control. I mean, admittedly, it's not particularly very accurate. You know, it's not like an actual thumb gimbal, but it does work. and it works really kind of well.
It would be an awesome gimbal control where you can slowly pan around and target your camera.
Yeah, I've got a 2-meter electric glider on the wall back there. I don't know if you can see the purple wings behind the tiger moth, but that actually has the gimbal set up, the little joystick set up as the pan for the FPV camera, and I've just got a slow mix set onto it on the Servo channel, and it works great. It's fantastic. You know, you just, all you have to do is just take your thumb off the throttle or the rudder, just down here like that, and you know, you can scan around with the camera. It's absolutely brilliant. And you know, the only downside is it's the only radio that's got it. So if you want that, you need an X12S. But you know, it's worth it. I think it's a fantastic little way to do it. But also on my INAV aircraft, I have that little joystick set up as my mode switch, my flight mode switch. So it's got a bit of logic programming in the radio that says when you move the stick in whichever prescribed direction beyond 50%, it modifies a global variable, and then the global variable changes the flight mode, and also calls out the flight mode. And then not only has it got I have it in 4 directions, but I have a modifier switch on the momentary up the top here. So I just hold that down, and then it flips the mode switch to another 4 positions on that channel. So you get it turns it from a 4-way switch to an 8-way, and you can go to pretty much any mode without going through another, or losing, you know, having to disable a navigation mode or something like that. It just instantly flicks it over, and it also has a auto-tune mode that won't release auto-tune unless you select acro, and it puts it, it's all kind of programmed, it puts it into acro mode to do the tune, and then won't release it again until you manually push the acro button again. So you can't it out, you can't change it into, you know, cruise mode or an angle mode and lose your tune or anything like that, or I don't know what it would do, but yeah, just kind of a safety thing.
Wow, you're in like getting into the Darren mode right now, or you're just kind of like you're into like extreme geek mode. It's just awesome.
Yeah, you kind of get home from work and you just kind of want to relax and chill out, and you know, maybe, you know, building a 3-meter tiger moth seems a bit too much, so you sit down with your trusty FrSky radio and kind of get into full geek mode and do some really cool programming.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's kind of what's cool about the group, is if we need people, if you do stuff like this, that is, you know, even you think like I'm the only person that's going to do interested in this, put it out there, because you'll find other people who actually will be really interested about that. And you kind of like, this is how we kind of got, we found Darren, which was kind of like, we need help programming it, OpenTX, and for a group model build. The next thing you know, the guy's designing logos and all sorts of other stuff like that.
Yeah,
And
that's awesome.
Yeah, he's like the 4th largest contributor of the INAV configurator. So it's, you know, people, if you have energy and you're doing stuff, put it out there, because we just, the group needs that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I tried to, I think I even made somebody, I don't know if it was for the INAV group, but I made somebody a PDF how to program that, you know, with screenshots and everything.
Oh man, you can send that to me, because I actually have that radio. It's in the someone actually did some modifications on it and broke it, and so it's been in repair at FrSky for like the last 2 months. So,
oh wow.
One of these days I'll get it back. But one thing I'll say though about that radio is when you hold it in your hands, it's like no other radio you've ever held in your hands before.
Oh, absolutely. It's the first flight, I was just like, wow, this thing is incredible. You know, I mean, it's, how old is it? It's like a 3-4 year old radio, something like that.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm just kind of blown away, and it's all kind of like CNC machined sort of bits and really high grade plastics and silicon connection cables inside. It kind of like spared no expense. It was great. It's great piece of kit. And you know, I made even made I think it was an INAV based audio file set for it, and you know, with kind of the INAV mode call outs and stuff. And I think I posted that on the group as well. So there's some stuff out there.
Oh, cool. Absolutely fantastic. So what types of planes? I obviously like the Tiger Moth. So you like the classic scale planes, and you like wings. What else do you like to fly?
Yeah, it's kind of that basically. It's kind of warbirds or really beautiful scale aircraft and crazy ass fast flying wings. And that the Z2 that I referenced earlier, that's like 10 years old now. It's been crashed so many times. There's more glue than foam. I kind of joke, to people, but it flies just as good as it did. Well, almost when I built it. It's a fantastic plane, and what I do like is some gliders. You empower gliders or anything like that. Just to kind of relax. You have a kind of crazy proximity flight with the Z, or hopefully the little Mini Drak there. And then end of the day, a couple of packs with the glider just floating around in the evening sunset. It's just magic. Absolutely magical.
That's interesting. So the Mini Drak, I mean, now that the Mini Drak has turned into something like you're street legit if you own one.
Yeah. What's made it even better is you can't buy them anymore. If you've got a box fresh one, there was a guy in the group who posted one. I was like, ooh, you're lucky.
Yeah, I guess what happened was that they were moving locations, Right Wing, and they found 11 Mini Draks, so they kind of let it be known out there, like, we got 11 Mini Draks for sale. And so a few guys who are tight got a hold of those planes. But I guess I thought that they just had issues with manufacturing. They're going to make them again some point. It's just that they have not been available for like the last 6 months to a year.
Yeah, there's definitely been a hold on the production of those planes, which is a great shame because there's so many people who are kind of clamoring after one, and you see at least one post a day in various groups saying, oh, where can I buy a Mini Drak, or can I get a Nano or something, where can I get a Right Wing, and just people saying you just got to look, you just got to scour the internet for them and groups, and maybe you get one, maybe you don't. So yeah, I mean, hopefully Chris will get some production going again fairly soon.
We just need 350 people each to buy one, and then
Yeah, well, that was the thing. I think I remember seeing a post that he made in the Right Wing group that he needed prepaid pre-orders basically to get the production going on another batch. I forget what number that was, but even if it was even true or not, I don't know.
Something about they're made in Germany, or like the mold.
Yeah, they're made in Germany, then shipped over to the US, and then half of them get shipped back again to Europe. So the carbon footprint is probably not ideal. The carbon offset even. But yeah, what they could really do is to cut the cost down is like a European distributor where they'd get a production run going in Germany, they'd go off to the distributor, and then the European customers would get their Drak from the European guy rather than it going across the ocean twice.
That's interesting. And we actually had a guy who in the group who made one that looks very similar, and there was some kind of legal disputes going on between these two.
Yes, yeah, there was a guy in the UK actually. He put up a model that was that had some resemblance to the Right Wing Drak, and I think there was discussions, shall we say, between the two of them, and I think it was kind of Chris doesn't like to talk about it. I've seen some people asked him online, and he was just like, no, I'm done with this, let's move on to talk about something else.
So I'm who makes a really interesting plane, because I guess the thing about the Right Wing Drak is that the molding on it is so precise that it's very almost indestructible.
Yeah, it's the best molded foam aircraft I've seen. I was just blown away when I opened the box. When I took delivery of my one, it was just like, wow, this foam is incredible. Why doesn't everyone else use this foam? It's just far beyond anything that I'd seen before, and especially having that break in flying, going from a kind of styrofoam-esque, EPO Z2, is to the Mini Drak foam or the Drak foam, it's just a different world.
You know who makes also a really good foam plane is someone you wouldn't expect. That would be Arthur with his stealth wings. So we talked about it a lot last year. Mark mentioned it today, the RAFX. That thing is amazing. It's practically indestructible. Mark, what do you think about the difference between like the RAFX and you've seen the Mini Drak before in person, right?
I have seen Mini Draks in person, and I would say I'm not a foam expert, so I'm not Matthew Ogborn. He can better make a decision what's better and what's the benefits and whatnot. But overall, yes, Arthur is really picky what kind of foam he uses. So I was involved in the development of the RAFX actually last year, and I remember when he got really a complete palette of foam blocks delivered at his to his shop, and then he said, "No, I can't use it. It doesn't fit my needs, and it doesn't fit my expectations. It's not the quality I want," and he shipped it all back. So he said, "No, please do that again. I'm not happy with that." So he is really picky on that. And in my opinion, that's absolutely worth it. When I put the RAFX together the first time, I made some kind of quick build, if you can name it that way, because you have to do some gluing, you have to do some waiting. So it was basically 1 hour work and 24 hours waiting for the glue to dry. So it took me 3 days by that to build the whole plane, just to get it in the air. And then I made it, and everything was fine, quick tuning. And then on the second time I wanted to fly it, I was going into position hold, and what I wanted to do is, with runner radio, I put it into position hold, put the radio on the ground, and then wanted to take my second radio to fly my quad and chase it in the air.
Yeah.
And by accident, I bumped the throttle and set the throttle to 0 when I put the radio down while it's in position hold, and my throttle, or how's it called, motor stop override was enabled. So it cut the motor, it didn't stall, it cut the motor, and it circled and spiraled down. And just when I looked up, I just saw it, or just when I put on my goggles, I saw a second later it hitting nose first into a tree, but a slim tree, directly into the stem with about 60-70 kilometers per hour. It had nothing, absolutely no damage, not even a wrinkled nose.
It's insane how good the build quality is in that. Yeah. So they're kind of, it's Arthur just really, he's kind of, we've had him on before, and he's kind of like like the Doc from Back to the Future, with the lab coat and everything, kind of like, he's just really kind of animated, kind of a lot of fun energy coming off the guy. So yeah, when it comes to, the precision on everything he does is so insanely good. So yeah, that's a plane that we really should be talking up again in the future. I have one that I'm going to be making fairly soon here. I was just waiting for the last bits of it to be put together, but it sounds like it flies beautifully.
I have some planes with the RAFX too. So I was just a lot of in contact with Hendrik recently, and he tried out a few new things to color or paint his foam planes, and he started to use Plasti-Dip for experimenting, and he said that's working so amazing and sticks so well. So my plan for the future is to completely rip off the lamination of the RAFX like it's now, completely paint the plane in Plasti-Dip that also gives a very sturdy surface, and then laminate over that. So it will become a real tank when that's done.
Jeez. Fantastic. Yeah, so if you can't get your hands on a Mini Drak, the next best thing is a RAFX. Can you say those in the same breath, do you think, Mark?
I would say so, yeah. That's pretty close in my opinion. There's /7FPV in the chat who just said the Mini Drak's foam is more sturdy than the RAFX foam. And that's a big number. But we discussed both on a very high grade here. Both are great. So yeah, I think that's a good alternative.
They're much different from what you're getting for $200 from like some of those other planes. Like everyone's talking about the Dolphin, and you know, hey, for an extra $20, $30, you're in a completely different class of plane. So, you know, and that's the thing to keep in mind, especially if you want something that doesn't fall apart after one bad landing or crashing into a tree at 70 miles an hour, like Marc has demonstrated. Yeah, that's definitely the way to go. And then also, like, if you're considering, like, I don't know if they still make the Dart, the Big Dart XL. I think they came out with a new version of it, didn't they?
The Dart XL is still produced, sure. And there's the enhanced version, and the old version is not sold anymore unless you get some old stock Zambia. But yeah, there we are again at the cheap Chinese press molded foam. Of course, this will never hold up that well. These are not planes you can easily crash and recover. You have to glue them. Luke, your microphone is on.
No, you're doing something on your desk, Luke.
Yeah, no problem. And yeah, that's a completely different story then compared to these ones. I mean, you also see it in the price. If you get a Dart XL, do they still sell it as a kit? I'm not sure right now.
But I think so.
But yeah. There was a kit in the past. I think it was about $80 or $90 or something. And yeah, for the Rafax, you have to pay 150 euros here in Europe. The Mini Drak is close to 200 after taxes and shipping and all that stuff. So yeah, that's a different league, definitely.
It's also the point, if you get over 1 meter in a plane, the only exception I would make is the C1 Chaser. That's an EPO foam plane, and it's so cheap that you can, if you destroy it, you can buy it over again. But if you're spending over $100 on an EPO foam plane or something like that, and you want something that's more durable, you need to get something like a Mini Drak. You need to get something like a Rafax. So because just the size of these things, you know, they're not going to take impact very well, especially with these larger batteries. I
mean, there's one important thing you have to consider, of course, for the plane choice. The Rafax, for example, and also the Mini Drak, and also the E-Rings and whatever planes you have with this sturdy foam, they are heavier. They are much heavier. I mean, the Rafax alone, I think it's 2.5 times the weight of a Dart XL. The foam is denser but has more weight. If you want a real long-range endurance platform, you don't want to have sturdy foam. You want to have a lightweight plane. That's the target, and it's completely different classes. You can't really compare them.
Okay.
I mean, just take my. I just recently got the XUAV Clouds, for example. It's a plane with 1 meter 88 wingspan. It's a huge plane, and the empty weight is 800 grams, and that's all the foam with all the plastic parts. It's 800 grams. It's about the same weight like the Rafax when it's empty, at not even half the size.
Well, fantastic. Well, guys, we are going to end it here. Just the moment that Darren gets up and walks out of the room. Rory, I want to thank you for being on the show today. It was really fantastic having you and having the good old chat with you, getting to know more about you.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. I just really appreciate the invitation and the chance to come on and speak to you guys and contribute to the group, and just really enjoying the whole INAV experience at the moment. And yeah, just thanks everybody. Fantastic.
Appreciate that. Luke, it's good seeing you again. You can get a haircut in the next month here?
Yeah, well, hopefully, I think it's the 18th or 19th where everything's opening back up again. So yeah, haircut then.
Oh, I thought we're almost there, aren't we? Or it is on the
18th or 19th of July. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So we got 4 more weeks of lockdown. Okay.
It would have been tomorrow, but now, yeah, it's been postponed.
So you're gonna follow Marc and our hairstyle, right? This is the INAV hairstyle. It's just buzz cut.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not even a buzz cut, just completely gone.
Just completely gone. Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed that the camera is pointed upwards now so that we can see the ceiling instead of what's going on in your bedroom.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's just nothing really interesting in this bedroom. It's just a bed with some clothes on it. So.
Oh, you're in someone else's room right now.
This is my room, just my room at my dad's house, rather than my room at uni.
Oh, you grew up in this room then?
No, so I mostly grew up in the room in my mum's house. But yeah, I did grow up here a bit, yeah.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Got it. Darren, do we have any? We have a new video that you put out there with what's new in INAV 3.0. So be sure to check that out, right, Darren?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it seems to be doing quite well. But yeah, if you want to learn about what's new in INAV 3.0, it's a good video for that, especially for the fixed wing.
Yeah, we didn't get too in depth in that today because we figured that we have your video out and we've kind of covered it in previous. But there's a good recap that you have, which is fantastic, which I'll be definitely checking out. Any other videos that we should pick up on that you put out in the last month?
To be honest, I can't really remember. I think there were a couple of it on ethos, yeah, to be honest, I've just been flat out with work. I've just been getting videos out there, and
yeah, you put out more videos than I can't believe it. You have like 60, 70 videos out there, and these are like really good, informative videos. So definitely, your channel is one that people should tune into.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it really is fantastic. Okay, that's good. And then Mark, you are. I was going to mention with you that something has changed in your life, and so we might want to mention it right now. Something that's going to make you a lot more accessible to check out all this fantastic INAV gear. And what is that? The big change?
I have a car now. So finally, I'm not only tied to that little park where I can fly some smaller things, but now I can go for my own on long range spots or open fields or whatever, wherever I want, and also can visit some people. So hopefully some more collab videos will come up soon when I meet up with some people here in Germany, and maybe also with Pavel in the near future.
Wow. Okay, you get together with him. He's not too far away from you.
He currently, I think he is back in Poland, but he works in Berlin. So. He spends a lot of time in Berlin, and also if he is in Poland, he said we could meet somewhere in the middle. It's about 150 or 200 kilometers for each of us. So if we start in the morning, we can meet up the whole day, fly somewhere, and then just go back home. So that's doable.
Yeah, I always say, like guys typically when they get their first car, the next thing is a girlfriend. You end up getting a snow goose, right? That was just, you wanted like the biggest plane possible.
XUAV clouds, is it?
Yeah, okay, the clouds, yeah.
Yeah. But that would take a little bit more. I just have it already because it was on a flash sale on Banggood for 30 euros less than normal. So I just paid 145 with free shipping. I said, okay, now I get it, save some money, and next week I will order the main part of the electronics just to get it airborne, and then after a while, step by step, I will upgrade it. The biggest and most expensive thing will be the battery, because that pack I want to build will cost me about 200 euros just for the battery.
Wow. Yeah. That's fantastic. All right. Well, hey, enjoy that. Looking forward to seeing some videos, and I'm sure that the website's going to be updated with, we're going to have small planes like the Dart 250G and the Talon 250G, and then all of a sudden you're going to see things like the Snow Goose, and you'll see things like the Clouds, and you'll see things like all these MFD planes coming out in the near future. So you'll see like a pretty good range of planes.
And I'm not sure if I will have two of these big bombers so soon, because my room here, my flat is getting really tight.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so what other planes are you interested in getting now that you have a car?
After that one, actually I'm more interested to get a 7-inch quadcopter in the next step, and after that, yeah, we will see what comes up. ZOHD has something in the works I'm not allowed to talk about yet. That will be interesting, and maybe I will start to sell some of the old ones and get room for something new. I will see.
All right, so, and your people at home, Mark said, I'm going to translate from German into English here. Sell your stuff because something amazing is about to come out with Zoe HD, and you want to get that. And he can't talk about it, but it's absolutely cool. So be sure to like get rid of the planes you don't want right now because you're going to want to buy this. Whatever it is, it's going to be awesome. Mark's turning red.
We'll see.
Awesome.
Nothing is fixed yet.
Okay. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us. Have a great Father's Day, and we'll catch you next time.
See ya. Bye.